Just before this episode, here's how you can get more from Never a Truer Word. If you're listening to this podcast on Spotify, you can subscribe to this channel to get early access to the weekly analysis episodes, video episodes so you can see the statements as I analyse them, and exclusive content too. And if you're here on YouTube, then become a member of the channel to get early access to everything and exclusive content not available anywhere else.
So my husband passed away unexpectedly last year. It completely took us all by shock.
That's Kouri Richins being interviewed on television about a book that she wrote after the death of her husband, and the purpose of the book was to help children deal with grief. But there's a twist. Welcome to Never a Truer Word. I'm Jack, and here we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And that's what we're going to do with Kouri, because shortly after she recorded that interview, she was arrested and charged with murdering her husband by poisoning. We're going to look at the words and see, well, she doesn't give off Scott Peterson or Chris Watts creepy vibes in this interview. When we were watching it, would we have gone, there's something up here? Did she do something to her husband? I'm not sure we would. But when we look at the words she uses, potentially, will we see some more? And this is going to be hindered as well because the way people talk about death can be very different from how they talk about other things. I've got an example here, a tragic example from Mariah Carey, who lost her mum and her sister on the same weekend. And Mariah's words are, "My heart is broken that I've lost my mother this past weekend. Sadly, in a tragic turn of events, my sister lost her life on the same day. I feel blessed that I was able to spend the last week with my mom before she passed. I appreciate everyone's love and support and respect for my privacy during this impossible time." Now, do you notice there, you can see just in terms of the amount of content she gives to her mum versus her sister, she was closer to her mum and feels the death of her mum a lot more than she felt the death of her sister. And that's not a surprise. Mariah and her sister were somewhat estranged. You can see it even in the words there. She talks about herself personally. I've lost my mother. She joins herself into it there with I've lost my mother. In comparison, she says, my sister lost her life on the same day. So I've lost my mum, my sister lost her life. Mariah, two very different deaths, or the deaths have hit her in two different ways, and that comes out in her words. So let's look at Kouri giving a full interview on TV and see what we can get from her words. Here's part one.
Joining us now is author of Are You With Me? Kouri Richins, to share her 3 C's to helping kids cope with grief. And Kouri, I want to start with your story. What happened in your personal life?
So my husband passed away unexpectedly last year. So it's March 4th was a 1-year anniversary for us, and he was 39. It completely took us all by shock. And we have 3 little boys, 10, 9, and 6. And, my kids and I kind of wrote this book on the different emotions and grieving processes that we've experienced last year, and hoping that it can kind of help other kids deal with this and kind of find happiness some way or another.
So what have we got there? Her answer is, so my husband passed away unexpectedly last year. Now, I put this to the Never a Truer Word community to see what they could spot in some of those clips. So Sheila, thanks for getting in touch. Sheila says she starts off with the word so. She's getting ready to start a story. Great spot, Sheila. When someone starts an answer with so or well, just pay attention to what's being said there. They're setting you up for a story or setting you up for something unexpected. So the word so at the start there is a giveaway. It's not saying what follows is a lie. It's putting you on red alert for potential deception or storytelling happening. Phil, thank you for getting in touch. Phil says, unexpectedly, completely by shock. She's really emphasising how she didn't see it coming. I agree with you, Phil. Now, look, that doesn't mean if someone says, I unexpectedly lost my husband, or if someone says it completely took us all by shock or surprise, which would be, we'll deal with in a bit, that doesn't mean they killed their husband. No, what we do here is we gather data. So the more things we see that are reassuring, the more we go, actually there's nothing going on here. The chances are this is all innocent and above board. The more things that raise red flags, the more data we see that makes us go, is there something going on here? The surer we are that we are being deceived by the words here. And she certainly is important to her to get across that it was unexpected and took them by shock. Phil also says, odd phrasing, took us by surprise, most people would say. Yeah, she says, took us by shock. Random Brandon, great name. Took us all by shock is a weird statement. It seemed like she was looking for the word surprise and came up with shock. Agree. Now, look, we all misspeak at times, so that could be it. Katrina says, it took us all by shock. What does that mean? Who talks like that? And 77 at birth says, I thought that too. Yeah, it could be a misspeak. We all misspeak. We all put the wrong words in sometimes. Is that what's going on here? Or sometimes when we misspeak, it's because we don't have the real words to deal with and articulate the situation that we are feeling. So again, another data point here. If someone says it completely took me by shock, it proves nothing. But this is another data point that something could be going on here, that she could not be talking authentically, which is why the words are not what we would expect. Kitty says, starting with so, not sure about that. Hey, we've dealt with that. Thank you, Kitty, for that. Sounds a bit casual to me. It completely emphasising with completely. Surely it would be a shock if it was unexpected anyway. Yes. And then this is a great spot, Kitty. I didn't get this one. Took us all by shock rather than took me by shock. So she's hiding in the crowd, says Kitty. I can't see anything else to point out. I'm keen to hear your take on it. It's here for you, Kitty. So what else do I have in that answer? Look how often she says, you know, we kind of, my kids and I, hoping that it can be kind of help other kids, and deal with this kind of, find happiness. What's going on there? Well, look, she looks really nervous in this interview. And now that may be nerves because she's telling a bogus story, trying to cover up for something that she's done to her husband. Or it could be nerves because lots of us, I would be, if you were on television being interviewed about the book you'd written, the first book that you'd written, maybe your first television experience, you would be nervous as well. So I wonder if these you-knows are actually crutches while she thinks about what it is that she wants to say next, and she does this, while she's finding the words that she wants to say next. I think these you-knows could be crutches. But as well as the you-knows, we have these kind ofs. My kids and I kind of wrote the book hoping that it can kind of help other kids and kind of, find happiness some way or another. Now, kind of, again, that could be one of those crutches, but kind of is different from, kind of means not really. Yeah, that's what kind of literally means. Kind of means not really. And I wonder if that is because she has a lack of belief in what she was saying. As we go through this, I'm not entirely sure her kids had anything to do with writing this book, which is why kind of my kids, we kind of wrote this book, kind of trying to help other kids, kind of find happiness some way or another. I think that kind of comes from a lack of belief in what she is saying. Another red flag. She softens it here. My husband passed away unexpectedly last year. She doesn't say my husband died unexpectedly last year, just my husband passed away unexpectedly last year. Now look, Mariah softened it as well. She talked about her mother and sister lost their lives and passing away. So I'm not saying that, again, this is deceptive, but this is the only time she really deals with death in the entire interview. And she talks about my husband passed away. Always instructive to look at what is missing when someone talks. Do you spot things missing here? Because I do. What's the husband's name? Just talks about my husband. When we're close to people, we tend to use their name. Even if it's to introduce them, we might call them my husband and he later on. But she never names her husband. Eric was his name, by the way. Let's do him the honour of being mentioned here. Eric was the husband's name. How did he die? She does not go into any detail about how he died, apart from it was unexpected. She doesn't tell us that it was a car accident or a sudden illness or anything like that. She just says unexpectedly that took us all by shock. And she doesn't talk about her feelings at all here around the death. Apart from the death took us by shock, but death is bigger than that. Death is someone going from your life entirely, going from their life entirely, but going from your life entirely. And she doesn't talk about that whatsoever. So I've got things missing there. Again, if someone doesn't use a name, if someone says my husband died but doesn't say how, it's not suspicious necessarily. But when we start adding up all these data points that we've noticed, I think there is something going on here. Does she dodge the question? The question it's asked is, what happened in your personal life? And she does deal with it straight away. She says, my husband passed away unexpectedly last year. And later on, she does do a little bit more about what happened in her personal life. She said it completely took us all by shock. The rest of it is filler and fluff. It is not what happened in her personal life. This is obvious question about tell us that your husband died. It's not tell us about the book. It's what happened in your personal life. And she very quickly says, my husband passed away last year, and then moves on to talking about writing this book and about the different emotions and the grieving process that we've experienced last year. I think this is moving from something she doesn't want to talk about, the death of her husband, onto safer ground, somewhere where she feels much more secure talking, and that is around the book. One last spot with this one is she says at the very end, we're hoping that it can help other kids. She doesn't say exactly which kids, just other kids, just these amorphous other kids. It's obviously other kids who have suffered loss or the death of a loved one, but she doesn't say that. And this is another red flag. Look, people helping other people is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But when people say that what they're doing is for the benefit of others, it's not to benefit themselves. Very often used when someone is got some guilty knowledge of something and wants to get the public on their side and wants to enhance their image and look like a better person. And it's especially noticeable when they say they want to help other people, or I'm doing this for other people, or I don't want anyone else to find the same thing happening to me, but they don't get really explicit with what they are doing. They just talk about their desire to help other people. That's what I got from that first answer. Let's have another listen.
Joining us now is author of Are You With Me, Kouri Richins, to share her 3 C's to helping kids cope with grief. And Kouri, I want to start with your story. What happened in your personal life?
So my husband passed away unexpectedly last year. So it's March 4th was a 1-year anniversary for us, and he was 39. It completely took us all by shock. And we have 3 little boys, 10, 9, and 6. And, my kids and I kind of wrote this book on the different emotions and grieving processes that we've experienced last year. And, hoping that it can kind of help other kids, deal with this and kind of, find happiness some way or another.
Now, there's some really good interviews out there with the 2 women doing the interview here, because they felt something was off here. I don't think they could put their finger on it at the time, and I'm not blaming them for that, but they certainly spotted that she wasn't quite answering the questions, and they probably wanted to get more emotion out of her. So at the end of that, they kind of realised that, and so they ask a question designed to get a little bit more emotion. Have a listen.
Find happiness some way or another.
And to make sense and process, I'm
Yes.
sure. And I'm sure you felt that going through and trying to explain it and articulate it for you and your boys.
Yes, exactly. And so I've done, I'm new to all of this, so kind of doing all, research and reading books and things to try and understand, not only how to grieve as a widow, as a wife, but also, with my kids, how to help them understand what just happened. And what I have kind of found is, as I mentioned, it's kind of the 3 C's is how I visualize it. And it's, connection, continuity, and care. And it's, making sure connection is the major one, and making sure that their spirit is always alive in your home, and memories are always brought up, and doing things that your loved ones love to do, whether it's riding bikes or their favorite dinner, and just constantly, talking about them. And
By the way, I know there are some body language experts or enthusiasts in the Never a Truer Word community. I obviously don't deal with body language here, but if you do spot anything, let me know in the comments or on the socials. All the details are in the show notes. Listen back to that answer. And this video, by the way, very hard to track down. Funnily enough, the television station that aired the interview, they've taken it off their channel. And one of the first versions I found of it was on a YouTube channel dealing with domestic abuse. And someone was analysing the interview to see if there were signs of domestic abuse that had taken place within this relationship. So this next spot is not from me, it is from that channel, but I agree with it entirely, which is, if you remember, Kouri has just given her first answer, which is very waffly, very vague, very stuttery, full of your nose and kind ofs. And the host sums up in the question, I'm sure you felt going through and trying to explain it and articulate it for your boys. And the person on the channel I watched said, she says, exactly, as if, oh God, why didn't I think that? Why did I not say it like that? So that's a great spot, not mine, but I completely agree. That first exactly is, very telling. The host says, and I'm sure you felt that going through and trying to explain it and articulate it for you and your boys. Yes, exactly. That answers the question. Yes, exactly. And then the rest of it. And so I've done, I'm new to all of this. So kind of doing, research, reading books and things to try and understand, not only how to grieve as a widow, but as a wife, but also, with my kids, how to help them understand, and on and on is waffle that doesn't deal with the question. So she's once again gone away from this host trying to get her to talk about feelings and what was going on inside the family at the time. And she says, yes, exactly. And then she waffles a hell of a lot. Now, this bit really got to me. If you just isolate this, if you take out some of the fluff that she said she was doing research and reading books to try and understand, not only how to grieve as a widow. If we take the fluff out, she was reading books and things to try and understand how to grieve as a widow. She didn't know how to grieve as a widow. Was she trying to portray an authentic widow? And she had to read the books to try and find out what a widow should do, how a widow should behave. That's what the words there suggest. I was doing my research and reading books to try and understand how to grieve as a widow. We have more of those filler words. Look at all the knows. And so I've done, I'm new to all of this, research, not only to grieve as a widow, with my kids. And it's, connection. And it's, making sure connection is the major one, and memories are always brought up, talking about them. So lots of knows again. I do still think it's a crutch. I just think she's really unsure of what she's saying. So she's using, as a crutch. But then we've got all the kind ofs again. And I believe, again, the kind ofs are saying she's got a lack of belief in what she's saying. She's kind of saying it wasn't really this. It was just kind of this. When you say something was kind of scary, it wasn't really scary. It wasn't petrifyingly scary. It was just kind of scary. And that's what we've got there. So kind of doing research. Kind of the 3 C's, what I kind of found out. So again, I just think there's a lack of belief, and that lack of belief is around the content in the book. She talks about herself a little bit. She says, I'm new to all of this, and she talks about doing this for my kids. So the pronouns there, I'm new to all of this, and then doing it for my kids. But then she moves away from herself and her family and starts talking about the external world, the distant world, making sure their spirit is always alive in your home, and doing things that your loved ones love to do. Riding bikes are their favourite dinner, constantly talking about them. Now, that's kind of fine because she's an author. So if I'd written a book on AI, I would be saying, you need to be using ChatGPT, not I use ChatGPT. You need to be using Grok. You need to be learning about AI every single day because it changes every day. I would be using you as well. If I was writing a book on AI, I would be a subject expert on AI. So I would be doing that. So I kind of give her credit for doing that, and this is her trying to pass a message on to other people, which is her purpose of the book, which is why she has written a book, which is why she is on this television show. She is a subject matter expert in all of this. But it's really interesting that once again she hasn't spoken about herself. She's moved it on really quickly from saying she was new at this, so she did lots of research, and now she's talking about you. Was this a slip? I don't know, but I found it very interesting. She said that connection was about making sure their spirit is always alive in your home. Interesting. Is it only the home that you would want the spirit alive in? Later on in the interview, she'll talk about the spirit being alive somewhere else that is not at home. I don't know why she wanted the spirit always alive only in the home. So that's answer 2. Let's have another listen.
Find happiness some way or another.
And to make sense and process, I'm
Yes.
sure. And I'm sure you felt that going through and trying to explain it and articulate it for you and your boys.
Yes, exactly. And so I've done, I'm new to all of this, so kind of doing, research and reading books and things to try and understand, not only how to grieve as a widow, as a wife, but also, with my kids, how to help them understand what just happened. And what I have kind of found is, as I mentioned, it's kind of the 3 C's is how I visualize it. And it's, connection, continuity, and care. And it's, making sure connection is the major one, and making sure that their spirit is always alive in your home, and memories are always brought up, and doing things that your loved ones love to do, whether it's riding bikes or their favorite dinner, and just constantly, talking about them. And
we'll be back with Kouri in a minute, but what are you thinking so far? Do let me know in the comments if that's available on the platform that you are consuming this Never a Truer Word episode on, or you can get in touch on social media. All the links are in the show description. If you want more episodes like this, looking at the words that people in the news choose to use to see if there's deception going on or whether we're hearing from innocent people, then do press the subscribe button or the follow button. That means whenever a new episode comes along, you will get it straight away. If you can't wait and you want more, then why not become a member of the YouTube channel or a subscriber on Spotify? That means you'll get episodes like this as soon as they are released before everyone else, and you'll also get bonus exclusive content too. If you can't do any of that, you can press the like button. It takes about 0.3 of a second and helps this get out to more people. I'm sure a lot of people would be very interested in analysing Kouri Richins in what appears to be a very innocent interview, but I think as we are seeing, it might not be quite so innocent. So the like button, you can just press that now. Thank you. That will help this get out to more people. But also, you can share it as well. The share button, and send it to people who would be interested in knowing about this. I know a lot of people are interested in Kouri Richins' story. Right, let's go back to the interview.
And Kouri, do you mention at dinner, here's Dad, or Dad would like this meal, or Dad would, let's bring Dad on a bike ride?
yeah, exactly. And it's, explaining to my kids, just because he's not present here with us physically, that doesn't mean his presence isn't here with us, and he's doing these things with us, and he's here for birthdays, and he's here for Christmas, and and it's just comforting to them to know that they're not living this life alone. Like, Dad is still here, it's just in a different way.
Lots more knows. So Kouri, you mentioned dinner. Here's Dad, or would Dad like this meal? Let's bring Dad on a bike ride. Yeah, exactly. So we've got that yeah, exactly going off again. It's like the interviewer can sum up what Kouri wants to say a lot better than Kouri can. And once again, look at the pronouns that she's using. So as you know, explaining to my kids, so it's ownership of the kids, he's not present. They're kind of fine, yeah, because we know she's talking about Dad. Here with us physically, so this is her and her kids. His presence is here with us, so again it's us. He's doing these things with us, and he's there for Christmas, birthdays, and then she says it's comforting to them. So this is not about the whole family being comforted. Certainly she's not saying in her words that it's comforting to Kouri. She said it's comforting to them, to know that they're not living this life alone, like Dad is still here. That's the first mention of Dad, by the way. We still, as you'll know, have not heard his name. Kouri hasn't referred to her late husband by name at all. It's been him. or he most of the time. This is the first time I think that she said dad in this interview, giving him a bit of respect or a bit of closeness to the family. But what's most interesting to me in that is that these things that Kouri's talking about did not bring comfort to her, they brought comfort to her children. She said it's just comforting to them. Earlier, she said that she wanted her husband to be around all the time, and now he's just there for birthdays and for Christmas. That's just 4 days in the year now that she's quite happy to have him around. And she says about her kids that if they feel that their dad is around, they're not living this life alone. Well, wait a minute, Kouri, you're still there. They are not living their life alone, are they? They've got their mum there, but for some reason you think that they are living their life alone if they don't feel like dad is there. Lots to think about in this answer. Have another listen.
And Kouri, do you mention at dinner, here's dad, or dad would like this meal, or dad
Yes.
would, let's bring dad on a bike ride?
Yeah, exactly. And it's, explaining to my kid, just because he's not present here with us physically, that doesn't mean his presence isn't here with us, and he's doing these things with us. And he's, here for birthdays, and he's here for Christmas, and, and it's just comforting to them to know that, they're not living this life alone. Like, dad is still here, it's just in a different way.
So much to unpack in this. So many red flags, so many data points of just something seems to be going on with Kouri. Here's the next part of the interview.
Well, I opened up your book, and one of the first pages I saw is a little boy. It looks like he's standing in a hallway at school, and he's saying, "Are you still here?"
Yes, yeah, and it's, and that was like the first day of school, and, all the nerves that kids face on the first day of school with new, and just hoping, dad, like, walk with me, like, help me get through today, like, give me the strength to do that. And it has found, it's been a lot of peace for my kids to really remember that in the back of their head, that they're never alone,
So you actually wrote this book with your children.
I did. Mm-hmm.
And it's only been a year. How did you process and say go from processing death to I need to write a book and help others?
I just watched the struggle that my kids were going through, and I actually, I went on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and trying to find something that we could use to cope at nights. Nights are the hardest, it seems like, for everybody when, dealing with anything, but I just wanted some story to read to my kids at night, and I just could not find anything. I couldn't find anything that really, suited them or helped them find comfort and peace, and so, I was like, let's just write one. And so, I took things that my kids have said to me this last year, and we kind of articulated it and put it into a story, and, just have hopes that it will help other kids.
So she starts off by telling this story about the part of the book that is about the first day at school. It's so vague. What do you get from this? The words are yes, yeah, and it's, and that was like the first day of school. And, all the nerves that kids face on the first day of school with new, and just hoping, dad, like, walk with me, like, help me get through today, like, give me the strength to do that. And it has found, it has been a lot of peace for my kids to, to really remember that in the back of their head, that they're never alone. It's so vague. Whose first day at school is she talking about? Is it the character in the book? Is it one of her children that went through this? There's just no connection with this whatsoever. Who is the dad? Is it the dad to the fictional character in the book? I don't know. It's just so completely vague. There's just so little commitment from her. There's all these thoughts. The first day of school with the new, and just hoping she doesn't finish that thought off, and it has found, it has been a lot of peace for my kids. She doesn't finish the thought off about found either. She's just flitting from thought to thought and saying very little solid there. Then we move on to the part which is about writing the book with the kids, and how did she manage to go through that in a year from the death and processing that to actually writing a book. Now, she talks about, I watched the struggle that my kids were going through. Now, that's very interesting. That's very passive. It's not watched and hated seeing or felt the struggle, or I was really affected by the struggle. It's just that she watched the struggle, almost like she's watching this thing from afar. She wasn't there going through what the kids were going through, because she doesn't join herself to any of those feelings at all. By the way, the book, she hopes, will help other kids. Once again, there's that sort of what's going on here, when again it's not explicit. It's not help other kids who are going through the same thing, or help other kids deal with the sudden death of a loved one. It's just help other kids. So we've got this thing again about helping other people, which is always just a red flag. Just beware when someone said they're doing something for other people, especially when they're not very explicit about it. Are they deceiving you? Look what she talks about when she went on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. She was trying to find something that we could use to cope at night. Something that we could use. What sort of things? Just, it's a book. A book. Why can't you say a book? No, you got to say something we could use to cope at nights. Again, cope with what? Again, she's just not explicit. A book we could use to help cope with the grief at nights. Nights seem the hardest. For what? The hardest for what? She does not say. She does. Nights are just the hardest for everything. For everybody when you're dealing with anything. That's what she says. And that just means nothing. This is nothing to do with death. She's avoiding talking about death. She's avoiding talking about grief. And she's avoiding talking about loss. Just nights are the hardest, it seems like, for everybody when you're dealing with anything. So that could be overdue bills. That could be a flat tire on your car. That could be the fact that you've run out of coffee and you can't have a cup of coffee in the morning. Nights are the hardest for everybody when you're dealing with anything. I said I don't believe that her kids wrote that book with her. And why not? Well, it's this answer here, because just look at these red flags of deception. This question is about writing the book with the kids. It starts off that I spotted in this answer, she uses the word just a lot. If you're a regular here, you'll know just puts me on red alert for deception all the time. Whenever I see the word just, I want to know what it is, why they're describing things as just, because very often it is to make something sound tiny and insignificant, or it's to focus our attention on just that one thing. Just look at this, don't look at that over there, just this. So when I see the word just, and it's I just watched the struggle my kids were going through, I just wanted some story and I just could not find anything, let's just write one, just have hopes that it will help other kids. Lots of just in there. So I went red flag for deception. And then I noticed a bit of present tense when she's talking about past events. I went on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and it's not I tried to find something, it's I was trying to find something. So I went on Amazon and Barnes & Noble trying to find something. So I went, present tense. Another red flag that deception could be happening. And then she doesn't say nights were the hardest, and that's why we wanted to get something to read at night. It's nights are the hardest. So another bit of present tense there that got me looking out. And then finally, at the very end, we have that kind of, which I think is that lack of belief. So last year, we kind of articulated it and put it into a story. So I think with all those flags for deception going on there, I don't think that the kids helped write this. Let's have another listen to that part.
Well, I opened up your book, and one of the first pages I saw is a little boy. It looks like he's standing in a hallway at school, and he's saying, "Are you still here?"
Yes. Yeah. And it's, and that was like the first day of school, and, all the nerves that kids face on the first day of school with new, and just hoping, Dad, walk with me, help me get through today, give me the strength to do that. And it has found, it's been a lot of peace for my kids to really remember that in the back of their head, that they're never alone, So
you actually wrote this book with your children.
I did. Mm-hmm.
And it's only been a year. How did you process and say go from processing death to I need to write a book and help others?
I just watched the struggle that my kids were going through, and I actually, I went on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and trying to find something that we could use to cope at nights. Nights are the hardest, it seems like, for everybody when, dealing with anything, but I just wanted some story to read to my kids at night, and I just could not find anything. I couldn't find anything that really, suited them or helped them find comfort and peace, and so, I was like, let's just write one. And so, I took things that my kids have said to me this last year, and we kind of articulated it and put it into a story, and, just have hopes that it will help other kids.
Let's have a listen now to the last part of the interview.
Grief is not linear, and this sounds like it's a touchstone when you need it to come back to for you and your boys. So the first one you had mentioned was connection of the 3 C's, keeping the person's spirit alive. The second, continuity.
Yes, and that's, just making sure you're trying to stay, as much as you can on routine, and, whether that's, sports or pick up and drop off from school, or community activities, just, trying to stay in a routine as much as possible.
And then the last C is care.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So, on top of just loving your kids and hugging them and kissing them and, extra cuddles and everything, I think it's important that I've learned to really affirm, their feelings. When they're mad or they're sad, it's just that affirmation of, I understand, that you are upset, because of this. Let's talk about it, and so I think really it's not, it's the emotional and physical touch of it, but really letting your kids understand that why they're feeling the way that they are feeling, and it's okay, and let's deal with it and talk about it.
I think that is one of the most revealing parts that we've seen yet. She's asked about grief not being linear, and then asked to talk about 2 of the 3 C's that she mentions in her book. And she's gone very remote again. She's very distant. It's just making sure you're trying to stay as much as you can on routine, so she's just gone completely remote. She's asked about continuity, and her version of continuity is being on routine, and then it's just all about dropping off and picking up. So you're on routine, you're doing the sports drop, sports, or pick up and drop off from school or community activities. So this second C that she mentions in this book can only be explained by dropping your kids off and picking them up. Is that really going to comfort them when they've lost someone? I don't think so, but that, I think, is what we've got going on there. Then she's asked, the last C is care. What does that mean? And once again, there is a little bit of remoteness here. So she talks about loving your kids and letting your kids understand why they're feeling the way they are feeling is okay. But for the first time, she mentions herself in the centre of this in any meaty way. She says, I think it's important. So she's talking about herself. She's joining herself to this by using the word I a lot. I think it's important that I've learned to really affirm, their feelings when they're mad or they're sad, It's just the affirmation of, I understand that you are upset. And at the very end, she says, I'm still with it, and talk about it. And this is the most she's given of herself. And this is the most she's spoken about what is going on inside the family. And it's very, very interesting. It's this part here. I think it's really important that I've learned to really affirm, their feelings when they're mad or they're sad, It's just that affirmation of, I understand that you are upset. I'm still with it, and I still talk about it. And what has got her to talk about herself and her kids in such a close way, with none of that remoteness and none of that distance that we've seen everywhere else? Well, she tells us it's when the kids are mad or when they are sad. So when the kids are mad or when they are sad, that has got her talking about herself and what she does. That kids being mad and kids being sad, that is the first explicit emotion that we've heard from her all the way through this interview. It's an interview about someone dying, her husband dying a year ago. And we've gone 5 minutes through the interview before she talks about any explicit emotions. No, it's not hers, by the way. It's her kids. But mad, sad is the first time she's managed to bring any explicit emotion up, rather than just talking about feelings in general or emotions in general. Mad and sad. Have another listen.
Grief is not linear, and this sounds like it's a touchstone when you need it to come back to for you and your boys. So the first one you had mentioned was connection of the 3 C's, keeping the person's spirit alive. The second, continuity.
Yes, and that's, just making sure you're trying to stay, as much as you can on routine, and, whether that's, sports or pick up and drop off from school, or community activities, just, trying to stay in a routine as much as possible.
And then the last C is care.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So, you know, on top of just loving your kids and hugging them and kissing them and, you know, extra cuddles and everything, I think it's important that I've learned to really affirm, you know, their feelings. When they're mad or they're sad, you know, it's just that affirmation of, I understand, like, that you are upset, you know, because of this. Like, let's talk about it, you know. And so I think really it's not, you know, it's the emotional and physical touch of it, but really letting your kids understand that you know why they're feeling the way that they are feeling, and it's okay, and let's deal with it and talk about it.
That's Kouri Richins, children's author, expert in grieving and getting over loss, and shortly after that interview, arrested for murdering her husband. So what did I get from that interview? Look, most of it was hot air. It was froth. It was full of knows and kind ofs, and didn't really make a lot of sense. I didn't get a sense of what her book was about at all. And the other thing I spotted was that distance. She didn't mention her husband. She didn't really talk about death, and she kept putting things onto you rather than talking about her. What was really worrying is what she didn't do. She didn't name her husband. She didn't call him Eric once at all. She didn't honour him in any way. She didn't laud him, say what a great father he was, what a great person she was. She doesn't say she misses him at all. She doesn't say that. She said she doesn't know how to grieve. Well, why would that be? And she doesn't talk about death in any way whatsoever, apart from saying it was unexpected. She doesn't talk about the manner of death, and she just pushes death very, very far away. Odd for someone that's written a book about how to grieve. And what about that book? It's explained so badly. Look, do you know what it's about? Is it a real story? Is it a graphic novel? Who's in it? Is it the story of her kids, or is it... She just doesn't say. It's explained really badly. She has these 3 C's. It only boils down to 1 C, which is just carry on doing what you were doing. That is entirely what she says the book is about. It's just very odd in terms of books. The big thought behind the book, though, is keep the dead person alive. Just keep on doing what you were doing and pretend the dead person is there. What is going on there? Could be that if she was to be accused of murder, she could go, well, wait a minute, I've written a book saying that more than anything, I just keep trying to have my husband around the house. We act as if he's still there. We do the things that he used to do. If that's how I feel, if that's how I act now, would I really have killed him if I still want him to have her be around now? That's the theme of the book. It's that she just wants her husband around all the time. So how could she have killed him? And let's talk about confirmation bias, because as I said, I could have watched this interview and probably would not have gone, there's something going on there. Did she murder her husband? She's being very suspicious. That could be happening, but look, when I dig into the words, and this just shows the beauty of looking at the words and actually understanding what's being said and what isn't being said, when I see so many data points of red flags, so much markers of deception, that I think there is something going on there, and I don't see any reassuring factors at all. The right place for this all to be heard is in court, because this is just a 5-minute interview, a short interview. There's a big picture to be told. There's a lot of evidence to hear. So the right place is in court for a jury to decide, did Kouri Richins murder her husband, Eric? If you want more like this, then why not subscribe or follow if you're on Spotify? I'll be interested in all your comments as well, so please do leave comments or get in touch on social media. In the show description, you will find all the links on social media. The like button, look, this takes hours to put together. The like button takes that amount of time to actually press, and that helps this get out to more people and will repay those hours, the more people that watch this and understand a little bit more about how to look at what people are saying or people are writing and see what's going on, maybe with just people very close to them in their lives, to understand a little bit more about the language of truth and the language of deception. Please share this as well on social media or in any of the communities that you are in if you think there are people that would be interested in understanding a bit more about the Kouri Richins story. And if you want even more, if you want exclusive content, and if you want to get episodes like this before anyone else, you can subscribe on Spotify or become a member of the YouTube channel too. If you do any of those things, thank you so much. If you do the like button, I will like you the most. Neveratruerword.com is the website address. There you will find podcasts, you will find more videos. There's a couple of books as well if you want to We'll take a deep dive into understanding the language that is all around you, including deception and including uncoding the truth as well, which is just as important as deception. Also there at neveratruerword.com, you'll find an email address. I've had many interesting conversations with people on email over the past couple of weeks. So if you want to get in touch, you want to do it privately, then email there through the website, neveratruerword.com. And we'll see you for something new soon from Never a Truer Word.